The third set of questions I want to talk about concern managing and leading coalitions. And the first question concerning that was from Sylvia. And she asked, how can we attack a coalition if it's against us? I don't know. She says, I don't like to sound like a villain. So I don't want you to feel like a villain. I mean, it's common with a lot of these managerial strategies. You're learning how to not only mobilize action in a way, but also demobilize. And sometimes the actions being mobilized around us are undesirable. So it's not always a negative thing to undermine organization that's happening, particularly if it's not in a direction that's ideal for the participants. So in many ways, I think Hula answers this. I mean, he gives you ideas on what you can do. And you can look at the membership of the opposing coalition and see if you can attract members who may be at the periphery or who possess kind of specialized interests. And they could be met with broader goals of a coalition that you look to form. So you can poach talent and interests, right? That often happens. And you can even perform this indirectly by showing them better alternatives elsewhere. So there are a variety of ways, and they talk about, how specialists they want a rabbit instead of a deer, and all these things that you saw in Hula. But I do think there's a variety of tactics that you can do to kind of demobilize coalitions against you and whatnot. And I think you'll find that in terms of the different kinds of levels of commitment that people have to the coalition and whether they can find alternatives that would satisfy their needs. And you offering them those alternatives might be one mean of doing that. The other question was by G. Tholasaram, and he or she asked, what are the qualities required for a coalition leader? And I think that's directly related to this question about attack and undermining. And so there really isn't a simple answer to it. I mean, after all, for a coalition, it's not even clear there's one leader. So I suppose, though, that there are some core or key players that try to manage them. So we can talk about that way. But in general, coalitions are really sought in instances where you can't be an autocrat, where decisions are uncertain and distributed. If the circumstances change, then you're probably not going to want to try to rule by coalition or even develop one. So they're by definition pretty unstable, and a manager may not want to use that in certain cases. That said, if you're in a situation that fits that, there are a variety of things you can do. And a coalition leader will do the following. They'll try to bring strange bedfellows into an agreement on various issues. They'll try to make deals, persuade participants. They will find alternatives. They will manipulate. They will withhold some information. They'll build traps wherein some sort of action that's desired will be forced or rendered the only choice. And I know that sounds terrible in many ways, but if you think about politics, it's not so unrealistic. And a great example of an exceptional coalition builder can be read in the Pulitzer Prize winning work of Robert Caro, I think. And here, in that work, his subject was Lyndon B. Johnson. And for a lot of you out there, Lyndon B. Johnson was known as an American president, and he was known for forging big social policies like the Good Society, civil rights movement. He was involved in kind of helping that somewhat. And he was also considered more than that domestically. He was considered a wonderful legislator who was capable of handling politics in these kind of legislative decisions, which are very hard to accomplish. And so Caro documents it all, talks about Lyndon B. Johnson as kind of this professional genius at managing coalitions and bureaucratic politics. So I recommend you guys look that up if that's really an interest of yours. And I think it's a Pulitzer Prize winning work, so it's well written. The third question that's related to this was one Tina asked, and I think it's appropriate, which is, does coalition building drive corruption? Are all the means acceptable? And in many ways, this is why a lot of us have no interest in being a politician and compromising our principles in those ways. So Nonetheless, from the readings, it's clear that some members in a coalition will compromise their views more than others. Core members are the most invested in making something come about, and they cut deals everywhere. If you want to preserve your principles, I think it helps to have resources. It helps to have leverage. And then you don't need to compromise as much to accomplish your interests. However, this question really does raise an interesting issue for me, which is, should every organization's class and business school have ethics taught in their courses? And I realize I haven't really addressed that. But I'm pretty sympathetic to the idea. I'm not entirely sure how it'd be taught, because there's so many different ethical theories, right? So, for example, there's consequentialist theories of ethics, or utilitarianism. Do what produces the greatest happiness kind of argument, right? And there are variants of utilitarianism, which is, one is act utilitarianism, which says do whatever justifies the means, whatever act justifies the means. So killing one person, the argument is, to save thousands is fine. Then there's ruled utilitarian theory, which is different, which says more about, well, would this be a good law to put in place? Is it best to have a law where it's not right to kill, even if it saves 1,000? What kind of society would it be if it had acts like that or judgments like that as opposed to a law? Then there's kind of, people might be familiar with constantological kind of ethical theory, and that assesses actions based on the person's intention or the ethics of their sense of duty or the law that they're adopting. So this one is slightly different. You're not judged on the action you do, but rather on the will behind it, the quality of the law, the rationality of the law that you're being utilizing in guiding your will. And then it gets more complicated because there's pluralistic deontological views, which is which duty do you follow, which law, and you rank them. And then there's Aristotle, who talks about virtue theory, what kind of what would a good doctor do, what would a good manager do. And so there's ways we can elaborate ethical leadership. There's even natural laws. The people that believe in ethics based on natural laws, if it's not natural, you shouldn't do it, like reasoning about why you wouldn't have abortion laws, that it's not natural per se. Theories on rights, what are the inalienable rights? Do you base your leadership and judgment on those? Or do you follow some kind of religious ethic where no evil justifies a good? So we have St. Paulian ethics, for example, and on it goes. There's a long list, and it eventually becomes a course on its own about what are the ethics of leadership, I think. And but I agree the issue is pretty crucial in terms of what kind of manager or what kind of firm you would like to construct. There's implications there in terms of what kind of behaviors and the ethical framework you want people to adhere to. So, great question.